Hello and welcome to Access Asia. I'm Yuka Royer. Coming up in this edition, psychological warfare with K-pop and dung. North and South Korea's ratchet up propaganda as relations between the two neighbours hit new lows. They're welcome until there's too many of them. Over-tourism and poor behaviour by some visitors are testing locals' patience in Japan. And what do real-life hobbit holes look like? We'll visit a town in Australia where a majority of inhabitants live below the ground. Tension has flared up again between North and South Koreas in recent weeks, with both sides reviving Cold War-style propaganda campaigns. North Korea has sent hundreds of balloons carrying rubbish and even animal feces across the border. South Korea responded by deploying massive loudspeakers, blaring K-pop music and anti-Pyongyang messages across the 38th parallel. Well, for more on what this all means, let's bring in Lee Sung-Yoon, fellow at the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars and the author of The Sister, North Korea's Kim Yo-jong, the most dangerous woman in the world. Sung-Yoon, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Now, North Korea has been worrying the international community with their intensifying missile tests and deepening military ties with Russia. How disconcerting, then, is this cross-border escalation in propaganda warfare?
Well, unlike the popular view out there, North Korea doesn't merely react to what the big powers do or say. They seem to have even a grand strategy of their own, and they escalate tensions and resort to provocations in incremental steps. So, yes, this is an escalation sending filth, trash, and manure filled balloons into South Korea, as you just explained. And South Korea's response is proportional, it's measured. A broadcast speaker, blaring pop songs and news into North Korea, that is not amoral. It is not immoral, certainly. It's not illegal. It's sending information across frontiers, regardless of borders, into the most information deprived nation on earth, North Korea. So there is no moral or legal equivalence in what the two sides are doing to each other.
Now, while it's not morally wrong, perhaps, and very annoying to see filth sent across the border, Seoul didn't take the dropping of manure lightly at all. Is there real concern that Pyongyang could use balloons to carry, for instance, biological weapons?
North Korea excels in political warfare, including psychological manipulation. And yes, by sending manure and trash into the South, North Korea is intimating that it could do a lot more. For example, smear biological and chemical weapons on trash, and in the future, thus causing major harm, even something akin to an act of war in that case. So South Korea is concerned that North Korea would be even more avant-garde in its filthy, vulgar, and even perhaps lethal behavior.
Now, the redeployment of loudspeakers on the South Korean side may be symbolic of their frosty relations, as they had previously been removed as part of diplomatic efforts. Is there then no hope of reviving talks between the two that have been stalled since 2018?
I think there will come a time when North Korea reverts, goes back to a post provocation peace ploy phase, a fake charm offensive. We've seen this several times before, even going back to the grandfather of Kim Jong un, the original state founder, Kim Il sung, in 1972, when US President Nixon visited China. The dependent states of both China and the United States, like Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, dependent on the US, North Vietnam, and other countries, including North Korea, dependent on China, grew very concerned. And Kim Il sung came out beaming smiles and met with series of reporters, New York Times reporters, dozens of Japanese reporters, a Harvard Law School professor, thus coming across as a reasonable and even an affable leader. So there will come a time when North Korea reverts to that kind of peace ploy, and I feel that Kim Jong un's powerful sister will be the face, the sunny face of that next North Korean charm offensive.
And as you've just mentioned, the sister of the North Korean leader, Kim Yo-jong, she might might come back to the international community smiling with some charm offensive, but recently she has warned of further action if the South keeps up what she called its psychological warfare. You've written a book about her. How powerful and dangerous a woman is she in Pyongyang's leadership?
Well, we can't take everything that North Korea says at face value, but she has repeatedly issued formal statements threatening to preemptively nuke her peaceful neighbor state, South Korea. So she is saying, telling the world that she too has the proverbial finger on the nuclear button, as does her brother, of course. And in North Korea, there are no checks and balances between different branches of the government. Of the 9 nuclear states in the world, North Korea, the North Korean leadership is the least restrained. So it's a concerning development that the Kims, the brother and the sister, feel emboldened to continue to threaten to start a nuclear war.
Sung-Yoon, thank you so much for your analysis.
Thank you very much.
Like many popular places around the world, Japan is grappling with over-tourism. Record numbers of visitors have been arriving, over 3 million recorded in the month of April alone. Aurore Dupuis is here with me. So, the cheap yen is bringing an influx of visitors to Japan. That's a boon for the economy, of course, but it's also a burden for locals. Tell us why.
Well, tourists do bring a lot of money, but also bad behavior. There have been complaints that visitors are littering, trespassing, and even breaking traffic rules. Locals are having to literally spell it out for rude tourists. Some shops have put up signs telling foreign customers to stop opening items before purchasing them, for example. People are being asked not to run across the street just to take a selfie, but tourists just ignore the signs and they go to places where they're not allowed to go. Some people even chase geishas, traditional entertainers like paparazzis, and as a result, authorities in Kyoto have banned parts of the famous Gion district because of tourists bothering geishas. Now, more and more bloggers and influencers are denouncing this kind of behavior online. Let's check out this video showing a tourist disrespecting a shrine. And there was also an altercation that went viral a few weeks ago after a group of tourists were filmed arguing with a local. Now, many in Japan say that visitors are ill-mannered, but others say, hey, we've all misbehaved at some point in our lives. It's okay. Take a look at this video that went viral of a drunk passenger in Tokyo.
Yeah, having a bit too much to drink, I guess. Now, things are also heating up at Japan's major tourist magnet, that's Mount Fuji. So much so that authorities have moved to block the view. Well, what's going on there?
Mount Fuji is the most Instagrammable site in Japan. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's a place of religious pilgrimage and the inspiration of countless artists and writers. But the problem is that it's a victim of its own success. Hordes of people are invading the parking lots of a supermarket and a dentist practice just to take photos of Mount Fuji. And authorities have had to put up a giant mesh screen to block the view. But people, what do? They poked holes through the net to fit their phones in there. So now a metal fence will be built by the end of this month instead. And to curb the overcrowding on the volcano itself, hikers will have to pay a €12 fee as of July, and entries will be limited to 4,000 people per day.
Now, Mount Fuji, of course, holds a special place in the heart of the Japanese people. One property developer in Tokyo has taken this very, very seriously, hasn't it?
Yes, the developer built a 10-story apartment block, but decided to demolish it just before completion because it blocked residents' view of the mountain. Now, such deep respect for cultural landmarks shows why some tourists are perceived as rude when they disregard local customs. And understanding these customs can be tricky, though. For instance, if you could walk around the street and you eat a sandwich, well, it's shocking in Japan. But here in Paris, there's no big deal.
We do that all the time, yeah.
Right. So despite the generally calm and polite nature of Japanese society, the recent surge in tourism is really testing their patience.
Well, thank you so much for all that. Now, it's known as the opal capital of the world. The town of Coober Pedy in the outback of southern Australia has thrived on mining for centuries. It's also known as an underground city, with some 60% of the town's 1,500 residents living in carved dwellings to escape the region's scorching heat. Our colleagues at France Télévisions have this report.
Located in the middle of the outback, you'll find the mining town of Coober Pedy. Originally put on the map for the mining of opals, and today, its main attraction is the town itself, with many of its homes, shops, and businesses built underground.
Come in. As you can see, it's all hand-built.
Living below the surface has its advantages, like low energy costs.
You don't need AC because the temperature fluctuates from 20 to maybe 27 degrees. That's all you have because you live underground.
The idea for living underground came about at the beginning of the 20th century. This museum is one of the first troglodyte dwellings.
So come up through here, guys.
Built in 1916, it continues to be preserved today.
This is how the early miners, used to live. He carved just a basic bed frame out of the sandstone.
Residents of Coober Pedy have come up with clever ways to avoid the heat.
That's me, mate.
G'day, mate. How you going, man?
Yeah, good. Yeah, it's good to see you.
Like these two friends who've come out to enjoy a nighttime round of golf in the cool evening air.
During the day, you just wouldn't do it. Nah, it's just way too hot. So even people, that's why a lot of miners don't mine in the summertime, because it's just too hot to be out in the fields.
In order to play in the dark, the holes are lit up and they use fluorescent golf balls. Despite Coober Pedy's rough environment, plagued by heat and dust, some 1,500 people live in the town today, half as many than during its opal boom.
And that's it for this edition of Access Asia. Do stay tuned if you can. There's more world news coming up.